this coming from the guy who's like, just throw a picture up of something that isn't me and call it me. But I'm I'm not opposed to this prospect. I'm just saying.
Either way, you are back on the not televised revolution. You can call us crazy today, but you'll probably call us genius tomorrow. We are on top of the important topics, and of course, it's 9/11, so we have to cover 9/11.
Yeah. Um. So you
BuzzFeed News?
yeah, you wanted to come at it from 9/11 is it really was like the event that formed most of our lives nowadays. The vast majority of the people that are alive today have had at least most of their lives formed by this one event. Um, like everything changed. It really did over the next 2 or so years. Um, the Patriot Act is a really big instance of that. Um, and I really like to point out that we got this guy running for president who repeatedly takes credit for it when he says when he wrote the 1994 crime bill or the 1994 anti-terrorism bill, it was the same, essentially the same same bill um, as the Patriot Act.
So, how does Joe Biden really tie into all of this? 9/11, you know,
I he was an opportunist. Like okay, so after Oklahoma City and if like real conspiracy like there's some people out there that question that Oklahoma City was entirely on the up and up as well. But after Oklahoma City, he wrote a bill that very much mimicked um, the 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 Patriot Act, or at least that's what he says. And they passed elements of it right after Oklahoma City, but it wasn't as expansive as the Patriot Act. And then it actually took 9/11 to allow them to ramrod this bill through. Um, Biden has more than once said that he wrote the Patriot Act after the Oklahoma City, and it took 9/11 for it took 9/11 for Congress and the Senate to be able to pass it.
now
And he was
that's
a
a really
senator.
really good point. That's a really good point. Oklahoma City bombing was a big deal for about 2 days. Um,
It was a pretty big deal where I was, at least because I was in Colorado and McVeigh was actually tried there. Um, so I mean, like a lot of Oklahoma City fallout took place where I was at. So I don't know, like it would that it seemed like a big deal to me, but I guess maybe other parts of the country didn't share that experience. I'm not sure. That's where I was, so I kind of thought it was sort of a big thing.
right, but that's what we're trying to do today is to try to show you aspects of the 9/11 attack that you haven't thought of before. So Joe Biden had a lot to do with the Oklahoma thing?
When he wrote, when the Oklahoma City bombing took place, he wrote, um, he says that he wrote the Patriot Act and that they passed elements of it after the Oklahoma City bombing, but they didn't feel that they could pass the rest of it um, until after 9/11, and they might they might have been right. You know, they might have been right. I'm not sure if anybody in where I was would have complained, but at the time, red state, Colorado was it was a very red state, very you know
Right here in the BuzzFeed news article that you shared with me, Joe Biden is quoted as saying, I introduced the terrorism bill in 94. That had a lot of these things in it.
yeah, yeah, more than once. He's taken credit for the Patriot Act more than once, um, and he has also candidly said, although I couldn't find the citation anywhere I was looking for it, that it took 9/11 for him or for them to be able to pass it as well.
Wow. The terrorism bill. Is that referring to the Patriot Act?
The terrorism bill that was passed in 1994 was, now, this is when you get your tinfoil hat on, right? All right. 2 weeks.
Can you take me down to Funky Town?
Okay, I'm taking you down to Funky Town. So 2 weeks after uh, the attack on the World Trade Center. Now, I admit this is our government and everything, but 2 weeks afterwards, the geez, like 1,500-page bill, the Patriot Act, is passed. Okay. Now you're telling me that 2 weeks, 2 weeks after this this attack takes place, um, the 1,500-page law, writing 1,500 pages of law is not as simple as just writing a 1,500-page recipe.
It's not a 2 day
And
thing.
yeah, that doesn't happen in 2 days. So
No.
frickin', you're telling me that this 1,500-page law is just sprung from nothing? And no, that was sitting there laying in wait, waiting for something to happen, and they could pass it. And that's and Biden has described it as much.
The devil is in the details. For example, you talked about the internet. We can we can go now. See, this is 1994, and Joe Biden is like, they can't even type down what he said.
Right, right. This just sort of carries along with my little theory that a Democrat comes along and or a Republican comes along and whittles away at some institution or some civil liberty, and then a Democrat comes along and finishes the job. Like the Patriot Act is a wonderful example of that. Um, you know, whittles away at your civil liberties, your Fourth Amendment. W. Bush comes along yeah, W. Bush comes along and whittles away at that.
Oh.
And then Obama comes along and frickin' silences the whistleblowers, prosecutes them, and puts drones into full service and increases the size of the surveillance state.
Wow. And then of course the mainstream media comes along and says, "How dare
and
you say
says,
such
"How dare
things?"
you say such things about Obama?"
Yeah.
And we're still debating the things that Bush did, and that's the problem. Is now it's Obama's legacy that has to be protected, and and there it is, and then so then we and we can go back to like unions. Unions get whittled away by some people say that they were totally crushed by Reagan, but that wasn't true. Reagan didn't crush them. You still had to play nice with your labor after Reagan, but with NAFTA, you didn't anymore. And with so because you could just outsource it to Mexico or Canada, and you didn't have to play quite as nice with their labor, so you didn't have to pay quite as nice with their labor.
Right. I think it's hilarious when I say on a personal level to other people, just as a instead of hello, I say I didn't do it. But it's not so funny when it's on a global political scale,
Yeah,
which is what we're looking at, right?
yeah, and everybody says that that it's just one side doing it. Like, no, it's both sides. They're one. A Republican comes along and starts to debate about something, say Social Security, and a Democrat comes along and settles the debate. Usually, you've lost something.
All right. I'm going to go to your next article, and here it is on the screen for everybody. Uh,
Bolton or
ine.uaf.edu.
yes, yes. This this actually just came out a little while ago, probably 2 weeks, and the actual report is a PDF format. See that down here in draft report here. It's a pretty wordy thing, but the project summary that is right here in front of you, the principal conclusion, right here, second, third paragraph in on the project summary. The principal conclusion of our study is that fire did not cause the collapse of World Trade Center 7 on 9/11, contrary to the conclusions of the National NIST, I forget what that, and private engineering firms that studied the collapse. The secondary conclusion of our study is that the collapse of World Trade Center was a global failure involving the near simultaneous failure of every column in the building. That's um that's a pretty big statement.
It's hard to believe.
Yeah, well, not really. Like, it fell right into its footprint.
Right, and one thing I wanted to make sure to say to everyone, and this is not conspiracy, you can look this up. Jet fuel does not burn hot enough to just destroy metal like that. It just doesn't. It's like at least 400 degrees Fahrenheit short.
The pictures of the slant cut, but I for real, I don't know anybody that believes the official story about that. I don't know anyone. But they might be out there. If you're out there, you just seriously look. It's 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 not there. I'm not gonna proclaim that I know what happened that day, but I know that I don't know what happened that day. I have no clue. That's all I know.
Right.
And that really bugs me.
I really wish I had pulled up a video of a controlled demolition, but for anyone listening that doesn't get what I'm trying to say right now, just do a search, but not a Google search, because you know I'm against that. Do a search for a controlled demolition, and you'll see the same exact same thing you saw in 9/11. So what else in this article did you want to talk about?
Um, it's a pretty wordy conclusion. Like, uh, summary, I mean that pretty much sums it up. This well, you know, of course, this is the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. They're a pretty renowned pretty renowned school in as far as engineering is concerned, and um, like how they word it is they didn't actually like you know bite it exactly, but that last one involved that last little bit, the secondary conclusion is that the collapse was a global failure involving the near simultaneous failure of every column in the building. That's that's they don't say it's a controlled demolition, but they they say it. But once again, I mean, almost everybody I know feels something happened there. So I'm not sure that anybody is going to be really surprised by that, um, by this conclusion. But it came out just about 2 weeks ago. This isn't the first one. This is probably the fifth
Okay.
or so such study that is that I'm aware of that has been. This one just came a couple weeks ago. Just another little tidbit.
I find this actually very interesting because it is actionable. If you look at the last two paragraphs here, the research team is currently organizing and uploading my ability to use a mouse. There will be a 2 month public comment period from September 3rd to November 1st, 2019, with the final report will be released later this year. During this period, we welcome any and all members of the public to submit constructive comments intended to further the analysis and presentation of findings contained in the report.
Yeah, that is actionable, but they really are. They really are asking for constructive comments, like um, you know, even comments of encouragement aren't necessarily what they're after. They're you know they if like if they've missed something or something like that, if somebody actually like has a little tidbit out there, happens to be an engineer himself and want to throw a little bit of information on there that maybe they didn't take into account, then that's kind of what they're asking for.
It kind of does it sound. Does this make it seem to you like the UAF doesn't know everything that they should know?
Well, I I mean a lot of these are conducted by students, and and when we're talking about students, we're talking about like master's students and so on and so forth as well. So, like a lot of these tests are going to be, and a lot of the research is being directed by these academics, which you know these are young guys. A lot of us, you know, our age. I'm not saying that they don't know what they should know. I actually like the fact that they're coming at this from the approach that they don't know anything. It's a good thing. It's you know, trying to be very sterile and scientific about it is a good thing in my opinion. You know, I'm not saying that they should. I don't want them to know anything. Questions like I want them to to wonder. You know, that's kind of it's kind of a different thing.
All right, let's get on to how Mr. John R. Bolton fits into this.
Oh
I know, right?
well, um, this this cat, I this is he's one of the swamp critters that that jumped out when Trump came along and started trying to drain it. Apparently, this is like I like I do have to congratulate him on Trump on getting rid of him, but I don't really like. What the fuck did you appoint the guy for the in the first place for? Um, anyway, my uh, it just it he was like there, a little backroom bureaucrat. He was in the machine. In 2001, like right right after 2001, he's always been a apparatus of the national security.
He's got a really deep wiki page. Holy
Yes,
crap.
he does. Yes, he does. He goes all the way back to Reagan, but he was in the Department of State in 2001. Um, he was definitely pushing for weapons of mass destruction. He to this day he doesn't freaking say that it was a mistake to have gone into Afghanistan or Iraq. He still backs those moves. He thinks that they were the right moves.
Says
Um,
here he supported the Vietnam War.
yeah, yeah. This is a true swamp critter. Like born and bred.
So, what were the dots that you wanted to connect between Bolton and 9/11?
um. Well, this this particular guy. Um. Once again, regardless of what happened on that day, what happened after that day was really like the was really the big thing. This particular guy has taken advantage of those events, and he um, pushed forward his own agenda. Um, I'm not sure if it's entirely his. I have to be honest, but he took advantage of the fear that was generated on 9/11, and he not single-handedly, but he was part and parcel of the whole thing that went part and parcel of the whole bandwagon that went into the Middle East, and I could say that he was driving it. Um, he doesn't call himself a neocon, but he's a neocon through and through. Uh, Big government, bomb your way out of every problem. And
I would call him a sociopathic homicidal maniac if you ask me. I mean, and if you look at this wiki page, I mean, Wikipedia can be edited by anyone and
yeah,
it's all over.
it, yeah, he just,
I need to
can I
take
say
a
it?
shower after reading this page, and I'm not even halfway through it yet.
He just stepped into, he just stepped right up and like pushed us into these wars. He was part of
Everything.
everything, and he and like up to and including Venezuela, like today, like he's been doing it the whole time ever since. He never stopped. He didn't even pause. He didn't bother to even take a minute to take a breath.
All right.
Oh, we're in Iraq. Let's go into to Libya. Let's go into Syria and Iran. Yeah, We can take on the entirety of Asia.
If you're watching the not televised revolution, it's because you're awake and aware and because you care. So look up John Bolton on Wikipedia. It's gonna
Yeah.
blow your mind. Uh, And it's a long page.
Well, I mean, he's been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing us into two wars. He's been at least one of the little hands that's been pushing us in that direction
So I suppose
this
since
whole
it
time.
is September 2019, we should discuss why maybe Trump kicked Bolton out of the thing, or Bolton
Yeah,
left.
yeah. Wow.
I just call him Mustache Man. He
Mustache
deserves
Man.
it. He deserves it.
I'm kind of shocked. I have to be honest. Like, he's been. So I think basically what I really do. I think that this whole thing is a political calculation. He's just manipulating his base. He brings Bolton in, and frickin' Bolton fucks all this shit up, and then he gets to come along and say, "Oh, you see, I was talking about this, draining the swamp," even though he appointed him. Like he gets to try
Totally
get rid
lost.
of. He gets to he generates a crisis. For instance, the Iran crisis.
Oh, okay. And then Bolton comes in and cleans it up.
No, 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 no. It's the other way around. Frickin' he generates a crisis. Trump does. But frickin' then he fucking totally sticks that stink on that fucking guy. He's been doing this to his advisors the whole time. He generates a crisis, and then he you know, sticks the stink of that crisis on this one advisor or guy or person in his cabinet, and he fires the dude. And then he solves the crisis in some way. It's been like a good example of this. Um,
So I wanna start wrapping this up, but I do think that not everybody knows this, but Trump was actually pretty excited about the fact, and I don't use his real name very often. He was pretty excited about the fact that he suddenly had the tallest building in New York City. Do you think that there's any connection between the rump and the 9/11?
I I'll say again, I really have no idea what happened that day, but I just know that it wasn't that. What I'm told. Um, but if I had to guess, no. I mean, I say a lot. Don't underestimate the guy. Like, but I'm talking about Trump in reference to 2020. Don't underestimate the guy. Um, the thing that but at the same time, like maybe I am underestimating when I say this, but he's the whole point, the whole problem, the whole reason he's being treated treated the way he's being treated by the mainstream media, which didn't happen to Bush even at the time.
Hmm.
Um, the reason he's being treated that way is because he wasn't and never has been part of the club. That is the one thing that is true about him. He's not part of the club. He's kind of sort of part of the club, but he's not. So no, I don't think he did. Um,
I don't
that's
know. I just thought that would be a funny question to ask. Um, so
to
it's
be
really
honest.
hard to talk about 9/11. I mean, especially and have fun about it at the same time.
There's no real fun to be had. not much.
There's still hundreds of thousands of people suffering from lung cancer and stuff like that from, you know, cleaning up the mess and stuff. And
It it is, and um, we really do live in the results of that event. We really do. Our world at this moment, in a lot of ways, is a result of that event. It formed our world in massive ways.
that
Made it
reminds
a
me,
lot more fearful.
we were supposed to talk about the Patriot Act and the War Powers Act, the laws that came out after 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really have a Fourth Amendment right, really, anymore. Post Patriot Act. Um, uh, the the amount of surveillance that we're under now.
Yeah,
Um, that's all a result of the Patriot Act, and
facial
it's
recognition.
facial recognition. Thanks Amazon. Thanks Google. Don't be evil, right?
You know they took that down, right?
Yeah, I know. It just, yeah, yeah,
But
I know.
the other one, the War Powers Act, right? Where I forget what it's called, but the president can just declare war if it's an emergency.
The authorization for the use of force
That's
in
right.
the Middle East is,
UAF. Wait,
or
AUF. AUF.
yeah, AUF.
That's right.
Yeah, uh, it's been like
Used way
basically
too many
used.
times.
Yeah, that's like I don't.
About 17 the last time I heard.
Yeah, over and over and
Yeah.
over again. We just decide, oh well, this has something to do with it. This has something to do with it. This has something to do with it. These people on the other side of the world, they have something to do with it. Just it. Uh, yeah, we were way overusing our military ever since then. Um, we were all over Africa and freaking the Middle East.
Right, right. So,
Like, what
I,
does Somalia have to do with it?
I
What
kind
do
of
we
I
think
kind
of
of
that
want
movie?
to I kind of want to wrap by saying like if you think 9/11 really happened the way it was shown to you on the news or not, there's a lot of dots to connect here. Like who benefited from 9/11 happening? Um,
Oh,
how many people that were supposed to be in the building that day weren't there that day? You know, there's a lot to look at here, and it's 18 years later. We can open our minds and look at this and think about it.
we really need to. I would just like to wrap up on on the idea that if if the thing if 9/11, the justification for this last war that we have gotten ourselves into was the truth, it would be the first time in over a century. uh, Bay of Tonkin, Bay of Pigs, Lithuania,
Right.
Pearl Harbor, over and over
False
and
flags
over.
every time, yeah.
This would be the first time in a century. That's all.
Wow. I love hanging out with you, Bob Bobson, but this episode there was not a lot of room to have fun, my dude.
No, not really.
The episode is over, but the conversation never ends.